growing up around here, I still think of Randy Hankins as Crazy Craig O'Neill with big hair and being out at Wild River Country and wearing a tuxedo and shorts. He was a graduate of Little Rock Central in 1968 and married Ruth Jane Hankins in 1971. He graduated Arkansas State in 1972. He has 2 children and 2 grandchildren. And in his 54-year career, he has presided over 9,000 events. He began radio in 1969. Began in radio, not radio itself.
Began radio?
He began in radio in 1969. After 31 years, he got handsome and went into TV at THP 11. You didn't think I'd read that, did you? So he did that in 2000, and his first assignment was covering the Razorbacks at the Cotton Bowl when Arkansas beat Texas. He was in hopes of ending his THV career this year with another bowl game, but that kind of went south. Yeah. On December 29th, Craig will retire. So the man, the myth, the Arkansas legend, but as he said, mostly myth, Craig O'Neill.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Wonderful. Great to be with you. Can't say much for your podium, though. I know where you can get one. $19,000.
It's not a
Shelley,
debate.
are you taping this?
There's no
Okay, so
taping
we're going to
here.
edit this out because the governor may see it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to announce that I'm running for mayor of Bryant.
We'll give you the job.
Look at Rhonda. You want to start now? Terrific. Wild River Country. We used to. Did you come on Tuesdays? Do you remember? It was 1983. Wild River Country. Their slowest day of the week, as you can imagine, was Tuesday. So they said, you know what? Let's start a dance show that we can tape on Tuesday, and people will come out to be a part of the dance show on Tuesday that we'll show later on Saturday on Channel 4 on Saturday morning. And we'll call it Catching the Wave. You all, that show ran for 5 years. And I wouldn't say necessarily that the attendance improved on Tuesdays, but it was certainly very interesting. And if you watch video of those TV shows that went on for 5 years in the summer, it's basically Craig O'Neill in his early 30s dancing with 12-year-olds in bathing suits. Nowadays, you would have been canceled before the first show aired. But back then, oh, it was so cute, and Coca-Cola loved it. It was fabulous. Ain't turning back, that's for sure. But it is wonderful to come back and just share some things. Yeah, it's going to be December the 29th, but now things are not necessarily going to stop because I've gotten hooked on children's laughter. We haven't had that much so far in this little entertaining speech here, but children's laughter and reading books to children, I've gotten hooked on. So let's review. DJ, who was struggling in 1969 all the way through 1970, people were not talking about the radio show. And I was doing characters, I was making up all this stuff that I was doing, but nobody was talking about the radio show because, I don't know if y'all remember, Ray and Ram, kids, Ray and Ram was huge back then in 1978, trust me. And he was the talk of the town. Well, I heard of this guy named Russ Spooner in Nashville, Tennessee, who was making a name for himself doing prank telephone calls. Wonder if I tried that. So The very first prank came in the summer of in May of 78. For those of you who know Arkansas history, in 1978, Jim Guy Tucker was in a runoff for senator with David Pryor. Jimmy Carter was the president of the United States. And I would do Jimmy Carter every morning on television, on radio, and he would call me with the problems that were confronting us in that time. And I was very proud of my impersonation of Jimmy Carter. So I called David Pryor and Jim Guy Tucker in the very first prank telephone calls as Jimmy Carter wishing them luck. And that was about as far as it went. Unfortunately, in 1978, there were no smartphones. If you wanted to talk to them, you had to go through an operator and someone at the campaign headquarters, because kids, there were no smartphones. You couldn't reach somebody out in the field. You had to call the campaign headquarters, and you would have a nice Southern girl say something like, "Well, this is really nice, Mr. President. I'll be glad to give him the message." And that was about as far as it went. But you all got to know, in 1978, I'm 27 years old. It's the first time I've ever tried it. My hands are shaking as I start the record button, and I'm nervous as I can be. And once they answered, and I realized it didn't go anywhere, and I stopped, I looked up, and I was hooked. I was hooked. 4 days later, I called the Union National Bank as an adult, wanting to buy the bunk.
Oh my
And the
goodness.
woman who's the receptionist goes, "You want to buy the bunk?" "No, I want to buy the bunk." "Just a minute, you want to what?" "I want to buy the bunk." "You mean the bank? You want to buy the bank?" And I wound up talking to an executive vice president with the Arab voice, who was very polite, but he was not going to sell me the bank. For the first time ever, I go down to Union National Bank, which is in the bottom of the building where the radio station was, in the Prospect Building at the Heights. That's where the Union National Bank was at that time. For the first time ever, I walked into that bank to get a check cash, because kids, back then you had to write a check and you had to take it to a teller and you had to face the teller and get the check cashed. You couldn't just go, "Okay, we got $25. No, you did that. But for the first time in 1978, in May of 1978, I walked into that bank location and they were talking about the show and the call to the bank. I was hooked even more. I would end up making, by my calculation, about 400 prank telephone calls. Not every one of them you could use. Some became history. The most famous one of all was to LaShonda Reed,
Oh, yes.
who was a woman waiting. You know, she's a woman waiting on the cable guy, and I called the cable guy and said, "I'm going to be a little bit late." And she goes, and this is the first time hand on the hip attitude ever appeared on radio. She goes, "How late? How late? I got things to do." And I mean, she went off, and the call was historic, and it was 13 years after the first prank telephone call that they got a rebirth. I called the University of Texas and told them that the boy that was putting the word Texas in the end zone was sleep deprived. He was an intern from UALR and lost sleep because he's a student. Because back then, kids, you didn't sleep. You studied for exams, okay? You didn't have a computer answering your I'm sorry, I'm getting bitter. I don't mean to call you kids, okay? Because some of these people in here, like Kelly, they're kids. Okay. Anyway, he's sleep deprived. He's supposed to be lettering the field, and the lights are going down, and he puts an extra S on Texas.
Ruh-roh.
And I called the University of Texas, to see what they wanted to do about it, because we're going to be on national TV. And the great line is, well, we can't have it saying Tex ass now, can we? And my favorite line was, well, we can put 2 lines through the extra S and make it a dollar sign. That one was famous too. There were other ones. My personal favorite was to the Highway Sign Company that makes highway signs. People don't realize there's a sign company that makes highway signs. There's the highway department. So I'm the highway department calling the highway sign maker. We need a sign for Beaver Lake up near Eureka Springs. In the summertime, kids are walking across that dam, which doubles as a bridge. They're taking their shoes and socks off. They're walking across in their bare feet, and by the time they get to the other side, they're burning the bottoms of their feet because it's so blistering hot. So we need a sign to tell them not to do that. And the guy at the sign company says, well, we can make any sign you want, what you want it to say. And I said, hot damn. You see, y'all back then, no, it's okay. Hot damn, that's pretty funny. When do you want it? Now, the irony here is that after pulling all these pranks, I eventually become a newsman asking you to believe me. What's wrong with this picture? Because I just had this vision of people turning off the 10 o'clock news on Channel 11 going, well, Craig said it, whatever. I don't know if you can believe it or not. Maybe I was the birthplace of fake news. You never know. But what happened was there was a book called The Artist's Way, and it speaks to adventure in art. If you want to call broadcasting art, maybe it is. I've been a DJ for 31 years, and it was the year 2000. So I thought, all right, what's the adventure? Well, I was the voice of the Razorback Stadium for about 4 years, till Frank fired me. And I started it's an Arkansas Razorback. Do they do that at Bryant? Is a Bryant Hornet first down? Do they do that? I should get money. I should have charged for that. By the way, I got to share this with you. When I got sports at Channel 11, I wanted to be totally different. So at this first Salt Bowl, and I was around for the very first Salt Bowl, which I believe was played at the Bryant Stadium, I think. I'm pretty sure I'm right on this. The very first Salt Bowl was played at the Bryant Stadium, and as a joke, I went around throwing canisters of Morton salt into the stands. And the kids were diving for them. They were going after them, just like they were footballs with the cheerleaders from the bank. Because banks always have cheerleaders with little footballs, that have and they throw them in. No, I was throwing salt. That beat what I did in Cabot when I threw cantaloupes. So, anyway, point being, let's give sports on television a go. Let's try that and see what kind of adventure we would go to on that. And that proved to be quite an adventure. I got to, it didn't have anything to do with sports, but I got a chance to dance on Ellen, the Ellen Show, and
Can we see that dance? Can we see that dance?
Well, basically, here's what's funny, and it ties in. I was dancing like I used to on Catching the Wave. What I'm saying is, you gave me training for the Ellen Show, and I was doing it all. I was doing the Janet Jackson.
Okay.
Janet Jackson. She was really hot, I swear. And I was doing you'll love this, the Roger Rabbit. Hey, 2 knee operations, that's as far as I got.
Yeah.
And the Running Man, which is, okay, turn that off.
We gotta zoom out for this.
I'm proven to be too white. Anyway, so I was doing all those dances, and they caught me, and they decided to run my tape on later on down the line on the Ellen Show. And what happened was, can I share something with you all? Nobody knows this. Can I tell you all the real story? She had just started her syndicated show on Channel 11, and they said, you can come out here and interview her if you want, and Channel 11 jumped at that chance. Oh, here's a chance to interview Ellen DeGeneres, and they sent me. So I get a chance to interview her in front of her studio audience. And Kelly will tell you, anybody that's been, if I get a studio audience, ain't no telling what's gonna happen next. I had her call the Hogs. I had Ellen call, and the rest of the crowd call the Hogs, because I was also out there to cover Arkansas and USC, which I don't want to talk about because it was 70-21. Anyway, she calls the Hogs the first time and sits back down, Kelly. And I said, no. And everybody gets back up. She calls them the second time and she sits back down. And then I said, no, you got to do it a third time. She goes, oh, God. Well, her staff, y'all got to swear you don't say this. Don't tell anybody this. Which means it'll be all over Bryant by tomorrow. Her staff thought she was dissing Arkansas Razorback fans by looking like she was worn out, having to get back up and call the Hogs. So to make it up to us, they ran me dancing on the Ellen show. Quite frankly, I loved it. That was fabulous. Anyway, so we got into sports in 2008. I was into I've always been into Arkansas politics. I've always loved Arkansas politics. Love it. It's been the most fascinating thing to watch since the age of since the 60s, and how it has morphed and changed, and how we've gone from Democrat control to Republican control, which basically with the mindset of the Republican control was really Democrat control from the late whatever. So anyway, point being, it has just been fascinating. Education. Lafferty, I swear, I don't know what happened to us. In the 60s back at Central, we were cut-ups. Somehow, somewhere down the line, we got into education. I love reading to children. And the fact that you all are supporting the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. Where's that happy can?
Over here.
Where's that happy can?
Here it is.
It's over here.
Here's my $5. And if you all, that's a lot for me because I work for Chapter 11. So I'm into education, that, the economy, the war in Iraq. I called, when the war first started, I had the chance, the relatives of a man who was over there with our armed forces, our National Guard, was celebrating a birthday. We've got his mobile phone. Could you call him in Iraq and wish him happy birthday? He loved your radio show. I went, it's 2003, I've been out of radio for 3 years, but I called him. He was so grateful, he was reduced to tears.
Oh.
Here's the thing. He had just come back from building a wall around a school in Iraq. And I realized we don't know the full story. We get body counts, we get bombings, we don't know the full story. It is impossible to send Arkansas troops to someplace and the world not improve. Impossible. So from that point on, from 2003, the first thing I did every morning was read about the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. First thing, even though I'm doing sports, read about Iraq and Afghanistan. First thing. And the point being, I got into that. So when Andy Pearson left Channel 11, they looked to me to be the news anchor. And then I'm semi-retired, so I'm only doing the 10 o'clock. And then on December 29th, I'll be fully retired, except I'm still going to school. Which brings me to you all. We've got 5 minutes. If you want to ask me anything, I've got an answer. Including, why would you use a broadcast degree to go to Comet Cleaners and work the counter? Shelley.
Hey, I had 4 jobs at the time. That was the only one.
Wow, okay. She won't use this. Anyway, yes, I'm sorry.
Has anybody slipped something different on the prompter and you actually read it?
Has anybody put anything on the prompter?
That you
Like an
shouldn't have?
anchor man.
Yeah, the Anchorman.
You mean,
Change
play a
up
trick
what
on
the
you.
prompter was supposed to say, and you say something completely off.
oh gosh,
character.
I've done that. I've done everything. I've walked in front of the camera while Ed Buckner's trying to do emergency weather. Hey, Ed, you know. And he's trying to save your life, showing where the tornadoes hit. Get out of the way. I hold the blooper record. But yeah, I've changed things, and then I've had things changed on me, and then I've gotten it completely wrong. And the day I messed up all these rappers' names because of a controversy, to this day, Denise Middleton, still, who used to work with us, she's now down in Houston, Texas, and to get herself fired up for the day of, because she's a mom, working mom, she's on TV, to get herself fired up, she will look at my blooper, where she was standing beside me and could not. By the way, it was a blooper, because my goal was always to be on the Tonight Show. It was a blooper that Jimmy Fallon played on, and not only that, but what's the guy's name on CBS that did the late night show? Late, not Letterman, but
Craig Ferguson.
or Colbert. But anyway, yeah, Ferguson.
Yeah, Craig Ferguson.
No, not Ferguson. It was one after him, British guy. Anyway, he played it too. Jimmy Fallon played it on the Tonight Show, and it's when I'm with Denise, and we're on the desk, and Dawn Scott is out at the Big Dam Bridge, and they're about to have the big 100-mile bike ride starting at Big Dam Bridge. Let's go live now to Dawn Scott. Something happened technically that crossed wires or something, so that when she began to speak, she sounded like Darth Vader. And here's beautiful Dawn Scott saying, "Well, Craig, there are well over 400 riders who expect," and Denise and I lost it. And they come back to us, and we're laughing. Fallon used it. Hey, I made the Tonight Show. Told you. Any other questions? Yes.
The one where you're in the drive-through and you can't make up your mind. And back then, when cars only had cassette players,
Cassette. It's about that big. Okay.
my mom had a set and I had a set. And whenever we were driving to work or school, that made my day.
Oh,
Just laughing.
thank you.
To
Thank you. I got to share with you an appearance at the Hot Springs Oakmont Rotary. Were you there that day?
I don't think so.
Okay. A man at the Hot Springs, I've forgotten his name, said that his father, he and his father, and I loved it when I would hear about a child and a parent. When he was little, he and his father would sit at the breakfast table, and every morning they would listen to me. And I had told a stupid joke that the young man thought was stupid. The father laughed so hard, his false teeth flew over the table. But here's the kicker. The son never knew that his father had false teeth until that moment. And I said, so when you hear my name, you think of a toothless father. He said, exactly.
That's so funny.
Yes, I'm sorry.
And there was, I remember when I was little, there was an issue with you and a billboard.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. We came on one day when I was on KKYK. The ratings had started to slip a little bit, and they said, you need to be edgier, Craig. You got to be edgier. You're too G-rated. So we came on there. We thought of this idea. Ladies and gentlemen, we're sorry to announce that Craig O'Neill has been suspended because of comments made on the show earlier. Well, I didn't say anything. The whole bit was they were going to announce that I was suspended to get the people talking, which we're now doing 28 years later, or 30, whatever. And I was suspended, and the next day, I would be 80 feet off I would be suspended in the air on a platform, 80 feet up on Canis Park, broadcasting live. So you get it? I was suspended, I'm still suspended, and we were raising money for flood relief. Come by and bring money and clothing for flood relief, because at that time Little Rock had been flooded. And I'm suspended, and you all, people are honking and waving on 630, because I can see them, they can see me, and they're just waving. I found out later, traffic had backed up all the way past Mayflower almost a Conway, from people slowing down, and they were not waving. They were middle fingering. I would say that the stunt backfired. No, not quite, because we did make the news and talk 40 years later, but it was not a great moment. But anyway, so that's what that was. That's exactly what that
I just remembered
was.
something about that.
Yeah. Anybody? Question, or you need to stretch?
Oh, sorry, I was just stretching. Sorry.
Well, funny for you, I also do yoga. Let's stand up. No, I'm just
I
kidding.
was wondering what you're gonna do to end your career. Surely you were gonna do something big.
See what you're doing?
What? Yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Okay, what you're doing, I'm gonna do. I'm gonna
You're
do.
gonna-
I'm gonna do.
You're gonna take my job.
No, I ain't gonna take your job. But I like what you're doing. I love.
Would you
how
like to
now-
buy the bunk?
I read in a book that kids today don't graduate looking for a job. Young people today graduate college creating their own job. And I think that's brilliant. If I had it to do over again and there was such a thing as podcasting or YouTube channel, forget trying to get a job on a TV or radio station, just do it. So I'm going to do that.
You're gonna have a podcast?
I'm going to have a podcast. I'm going to have my own YouTube channel. I'm going to go to schools. We're going to make them stars. We're going to make reading. And one last thing. LeVar Burton, who was the star, y'all know who I'm talking about, visited Little Rock about a month and a half ago. I got a chance to go with him to schools, and we watched the science of reading being taught in schools. We knew it as Hooked on Phonics. Now they've come back to it. It's called the science of reading. The sound made by the symbol of the letter, when combined with this letter, make a new sound which lead to a picture image, which leads to a sentence, which leads to a story. And you all, this is Washington Elementary in the middle of the hood, and the kids are like this. And they're on it, and they're making the sounds. And I look over at LeVar Burton, and tears are coming down his cheeks.
Aw.
Here's a man who did the Reading Rainbow, who's been all over the world, and he's seeing these kids buying in to the science of reading. And you all, it was equality on display in the United States of America. Children reading because they wanted to make that sound and that connection and that picture, and there, at that moment everything was equal, whether it be Spring Hill Elementary, Washington Elementary, Brooklyn Elementary, all things were equal at that point. And I saw this is where Reading Road Trip comes in. Dolly Parton gets them early when the brain is growing its quickest, gets them early. Science of Reading develops the reading, the equality, and then you have Craig O'Neill come in and sell them on how much fun books can be. And that's why I'm thanking you, because you're at the very start of that whole formula. Dolly Parton, Science of Reading, Craig O'Neill. Boom! What a combination. Thank you for your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have a question? Do what? Oh, yeah. Excuse me. Also, libraries who will open the door and say, you know what you just learned? Well, you know what you just heard? Look at this. How about that? Thank you all.
You get the highly coveted Fright Rotary mug.
Don't take this wrong, but Saline County gave me $500.
You got chicken salad.
Oh, never mind. I got chicken salad. Kelly knows that's a lie.
Hey, all right, thank y'all. We'll see y'all, remember, next week back here.